I wonder what the opening track is.
What could it be?
Okay. It's Surfer Girl.
Hey everyone, my name is Jake, and welcome to the 32nd episode of Good Timin. As always on this podcast, we're going to be talking all about one of our favorite bands, the Beach Boys. And today we're going to be continuing our early 60s album deep dive and covering the Beach Boys' third studio album, Surfer Girl, from 1963. So, as always with our album shows, we're first going to go over the album's history and background and talk about where Brian and the rest of the band were at the time. And then we'll discuss the individual tracks one by one and share our thoughts and opinions on each of them. And then at the very end of the show, we're also going to go over a few additional Beach Boys and Brian Wilson related recordings from around the time of the album's release, including some of the early Honeys material. And we'll share our thoughts on those as well. So joining me today, we have our usual crew of Riley and Matt. So as always, I'm happy to have you guys here, and I'm looking forward to talking about this important early album with you both. So before we get into our discussion, do you guys have any general thoughts or opinions on Surfer Girl that you wanted to share?
Yeah, sure. Surfer Girl is probably the first Beach Boys album that I truly fell in love with. I guess next to Pet Sounds, because everybody falls in love with Pet Sounds. But yeah, it's just the first one that really clicked with me, and it kind of shocked me how good the material was for being just their third studio album. It was the first record that I think I was really able to listen to, even with Pet Sounds, honestly, like beginning to end, no skips, just truly enjoy the entire experience. Even the shitty stuff is not so shitty when you have some of the Brian's best ballads. It's just, I feel like not only is it a great timepiece like the first two albums, but it also just stands on its own as very strong. I remember I got like two copies of it, and I was like happy. I like ran home from the record store because I didn't have a car. I literally like walked home, and I just wanted to listen to this particular copy. I got this for like $4. I was like, oh, I hope there's no scratches on it. I hope it sounds good. And I listened to the entirety of it. Yeah, it was the first Beach Boys album I think I truly fell in love with. And like I said, even though it's like a timepiece to 1963 with some, I guess, like quote unquote novelty tracks, man, even the novelty tracks, man, they're good.
Yeah. Definitely. I think this is the first, at least for me, it's the first great Beach Boys album. The highlights are amazing. Some of the finest early work in the catalog. This is where Brian really came into his own as a producer. I know this was also the first one that he officially got a production credit because the first two were credits to Nick Venet. Definitely could start hearing more layered production. The harmonies are getting more complex. The arrangements are getting better. He's starting to throw in, strings in there and harps and all this stuff that you weren't really hearing before on the earlier stuff. And it's just a great record. And even the filler is still very enjoyable and worthwhile. Not like some of the novelty stuff on the first two albums, like, The Shift and all that stuff.
But why is that always the one we point to? Is
No,
it
Noble Surfer.
That one's pretty bad too.
Noble Surfer?
I didn't want to hit the one punching bag that I think I've beaten to death already, so I tried to pick something else. And The Shift is just like the most forgettable song ever.
Yeah, at least I remember Noble Surfer. I remember how bad that one is.
Yeah, so my thoughts on Surfer Girl. I do think it's a significant step up from their first two albums. I also think the highlights are even higher on this album than they are in Surfin' Safari and Surfin' USA. And I think that even the lesser tracks on here are more enjoyable than a lot of the filler on those first two records. Like Matt said, I also think it's another step up for Brian in terms of production and also just songwriting. I think that this album definitely shows the progression of him. And I would also say that like there's some really beautiful harmonies and arrangements throughout this album. It's definitely one of their best sounding early records. I wouldn't consider, I know you guys said Surfer Girl is like your first great Beach Boys album. For me, I wouldn't say it's the first great one, just because the filler tracks still kind of hold it back a bit for me. I don't think they're bad, but they just don't all click with me really, where I wouldn't ever really listen to them outside the context of the album. But like I said, I do think it's a big step up from their previous albums. And for that reason, I think it is a very important album in the Beach Boys discography. So definitely a notable album for them. And there are a lot of really great tracks on it. So,
And a great cover too.
yes,
yeah.
very, very iconic cover.
Very iconic cover. Yep, very iconic and a great use of that first photo that not was in the first photo shoot, but that photo shoot they did.
No, it was from the first photo shoot.
But it wasn't
was,
it wasn't the very first photo shoot they ever did for Capitol. I think the very first one was the one
that one was the one they did for the
Surfing Safari 45.
Yeah, right. That was the first but like that was more like that was literally just one picture. This was an actual photo shoot. I think it says it on the record, the name of the photographer, Keen Vetter. And they did a bunch of photos. It's about time we talked about this because we could just get into the history. He took a bunch of pictures, and then he kind of let them let loose after like the actual like photo session, and then after that, even like when they were like letting loose on the beach, they took a bunch of pictures too, which is where
Yeah.
you get a lot of the like other famous pictures from the set. But yeah.
All right, so Riley, do you want to get into some of the history behind Surfer Girl and how the album came together?
Yeah, so there's a couple of important events that happened between Surfin' USA and Surfer Girl that are honestly some key moments in the band's history. Go back to early late 61, early 62. Gary Usher begins dating Ginger, and that's how he meets her cousins, who are Marilyn and Diane Rovell. Um, and so when Brian and the band are playing a gig at Pandora's Box in late 62, that's when he meets Diane, Marilyn, and Ginger for the first time. And it's kind of said that he was immediately infatuated with Marilyn, but not quite dating her yet because he was still with Judy Bowles. And then fast forward a little bit, Surfing USA is a smash success. The single did fantastic. The album rose the charts. And due to that continuing success, the band end up having, if I remember correctly from the book, a tour in the Midwest of 39 cities in 45 days, which is absolutely nuts. And now Brian can't do that. He's producing other side projects like the Honeys, which is with Marilyn and Diane and Ginger, and then other people like Bob and Sherry and his in-studio group, the Survivors. So Brian ends up calling back in Al Jardine to fill in on bass for him and vocals for the touring. He didn't tell Murray at first though, so when Murray found out that Al was rejoining the band, he was a bit pissed because, money. And that's kind of Murray's thing. The boys also do not Brian, although I think he joined for a couple of dates. I'm not quite sure. They also end up doing like a mini tour of Hawaii in 63. So the band is essentially a six-piece lineup, with Al being part of the live bands and Brian basically be like the studio band. You kind of see that studio live band split. But Al is also called in to help record some of the bass parts so Brian can fill in more on piano for what would be Surfer Girl. This is the first album that Brian is fully recognized as producer. He gets a lot more creative control with how the songs are arranged and how they sound. Um, yeah, that's pretty much it. They recorded 10 new songs. This one is a bit more ballad heavy because they released the Surfer Girl single finally, because I feel like Brian felt like it was finally ready for release, which kind of led him to do a bit more of a focus on ballads rather than straightforward rockers like the previous two. So yeah, that's Surfer Girl.
I just want to add a few things before we get into the track by track. Touching on Pandora's Box, I know that was a club on the Sunset Strip. If I'm not mistaken, and this might have been in Jim Murphy's book, didn't he kind of like say that this was kind of similar to the Beatles in Hamburg? Like this is where the Beach Boys really honed
This
the live act?
this was basically the Beach Boys Hamburg, although they didn't stay as long because I feel
No.
once they got that immediate success with Surfing Safari and eventually Surfing USA, they kind of weaned out of it pretty quickly. I mean, like we said, they were kind of doing college. They were still doing college fairs, or not college fairs, county fairs, college shows, playing like college parties. They weren't quite a big touring act, really. They were, even when they went to the Midwest, they were doing like mini venues, concert halls, county fairs. I just want to keep saying county fair to get the jig. But yeah, they were doing like fairground stuff. Actually, when they went on the tour in the Midwest, there's a story of how Carl and David lost their virginities.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. I
but
remember
the
that.
initial part was actually pretty funny because Murray didn't really want to go to the Midwest, so he hired some. I think it was either David's dad Elmer or just some random guy. I forgot, but I know for a fact whoever they hired, they didn't really do their job, or at least
Yeah.
not well, because they went fucking crazy. They were like doing like batshit stuff. And they took two different cars. I know Mike brought his car over to the Midwest, and so like they were just going wild. Let them run wild, as you might
They
say.
don't care.
Yeah,
They
there was
don't
the
care.
story of like
And
Dennis.
well, and then eventually word gets back to Murray pretty quickly about how much of a shit show it is and how much they're acting like, well, teenagers, because they were all teenagers except Mike and Al, I guess. So that's when Murray steps in pretty much as like the full-time touring manager too. And that's where you get like the stories of like he would fine them for swearing or not smiling on stage, which ultimately, roughly between or like the towards the before Surfer Girl was released or a little after, you have that story with David saying, I'm fucking done. I'm gonna quit. And then Murray's like, fucking do it. I dare you. And so you kind of have a weird like in-between period with David quitting because like he said he was gonna quit, but he still was with the band for like a solid like 4 to 6 more weeks. So I thought that's also worth mentioning too. But
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, they really went wild on tour. I know there's like a story like Dennis would like walk down the hall of the hotel naked. Like it's just like crazy. It was
Yeah.
just, I mean, it was, boys being boys, you know.
This might
yeah,
have been a little later. I remember reading a story about like David Marks dancing around like naked in like the hotel room or something, and like you could see him like through the window, like his butt and stuff. There was a bunch of funny stories that I read in one of the books. Might have been Heroes and Villains, but
Yeah, once Murray came into it, he ran a tight ship.
and like Brian wasn't really there either. So I mean, he's just doing his thing back home.
Yeah,
They said
bro.
like part of the reason why, another reason why Brian didn't want to do it, besides just like the general pressure. See, you think he like it said in Jim's book that he's like gaining weight, and it kind of made him a bit like insecure. And
mm.
a lot of the weight gain was from like stress, and he was doing a shit ton of work. And I think that kind of made him a bit insecure to be on stage when, of course, you got the handsome Mike Love, the most handsome man in the entire world. But yeah, so a lot going on. All that being said, I feel like this was kind of, in my eyes, was where, in terms of drama and like everything happening, maybe not so much with the success, is where the Beach Boys peaked, I guess, in terms of everything was going good for them. Even though
Mhm.
Brian had a little bit of stress, he was still not touring. He was able to do his side projects. Really see Brian start to flourish as like a songwriter and as a producer and arranger because he didn't have that stress of having to tour with the band. And there wasn't really much pressure on him to like release a Pet Sounds quite yet. So, yeah, do you want to get into the track listing?
Yeah, let's do it. Album track by track rundown. You want to kick us off, Riley, with the opening track?
I wonder what the opening track is.
What could it be?
It's Surfer Girl. Yeah, the opening track is Surfer Girl. We've talked about this one honestly quite a bit. It's one of the Beach Boys' greats. I think it's one of Brian's best songs, period. I know the chord progression initially isn't like anything nuts, but when you really take it apart, it kind of is. It's I mean, you kind of hear like the quote unquote resemblance with When You Wish Upon a Star, but I kind of hear it. But similarly to like Don't Worry Baby, first of all, Brian's doing it way better. I would say like it kicks When You Wish Upon a Star's ass. Um, but I mean, besides like the general melody, the arrangement is incredible. It's a very pleasing song. Um, I love how there's not really a lead vocal, but instead it's just the group harmonizing to sing the lead vocal. It's just one of the all-time greats. I've already talked about this song to death. Um, I love the little opening with the, I'm not sure if it's a bass or if it's a guitar. It's the bum bum bum.
Mhm.
And I love the little opening part. That opening part you don't really have on the Morgan session one. Because while
Yeah.
I kind of like the rawness and like the haunting like sound of that one, this one is just sonically just a great sounding song. And the arrangements are so tight. The vocals are gorgeous. I'm not sure if Al's on this one or not. Um, if he is, he's definitely blending out the song a bit better, but it's just one of the all-time great Beach Boys songs. It's been talked to death. There's not much I can say that hasn't already been said about it. And then you could probably argue it's Brian's first great song.
Yeah, beautiful song, great arrangement, great harmonies. The bridge section is gorgeous.
Mhm.
Um, I just think it's a wonderful song. And I used to love when they would sing it live and Dennis would end up going back there and he'd stick his finger in his ear and sing it. I thought that was like, that's the version they did at Nebworth in 80. I really love that version. But yeah, it's just a wonderful song. Great way to start off the album. And I know it was often cited as Brian's first song. I know that has been disputed, but regardless of when it was written, it's a great song.
Yeah, I pretty much echo everything you guys said. I think it's one of their best ballads. It's one of their most beloved ballads. It has amazing vocal harmonies. I love Brian's, especially during the bridge section. He sings that so beautifully. And yeah, it's just a really well arranged song and definitely one of the highlights of their early catalog. So great way to open the album. All right, track 2, Riley.
Song number 2 is Catch a Wave. And I'll be honest, I used to not care for this one at all. I used to think it was just meh. And then last year, roughly, when we kind of started the show, a little bit before that, maybe, I kind of realized how great this song actually is. Arrangement, it's a fast-paced song. So it has that like energy from like Surfing Safari and Surfing USA with the arrangement and the tight production that you get on Surfer Girl, and it makes it just for one killer track. I'm pretty sure Maureen, I think that's the name of Mike's sister, is on harp.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's very sonically pleasing song. It's really tight. The arrangements are great. I love the opening part, the "Get Your Wave," and it's really catchy. No pun intended. It's kind of them sticking with that like surf and beach theme, but moving it in a forward progression. Like there's a progression in the production. Like they're making honestly, I could see this if you label this song as like one of the precursors to Pet Sounds, I wouldn't knock you for it because honestly, you can kind of hear it a little bit. So I really like this one. Another highlight in it. I love the way that it picks up the pace of the album. So
Yeah, I think it's a great song. I love Dennis's drumming on it too. Love the harp. I actually think it's really cool that Mike chose this one to go on Endless Summer. I think that was a really good inclusion because it kind of brought it to a newer audience. Because I don't know if this one was ever done much. Was this ever done live? Probably not
oh my
often.
God, yeah. It's done.
Yeah, it was done live.
Maybe
Yeah,
not back in the day, but I mean, Mike, this is like a concert staple for
But
Mike.
nowadays, I mean,
Yeah,
I meant like back in the '60s. I don't think it was done live that often. Not that I know of, at least.
I would have to check the in concert book.
I'm not an expert on the live shows, but as I'm saying, I feel like when Mike put this on Endless Summer, he gave it a bigger platform.
for sure. Yeah.
So I think that's really cool because I think it's a great song. I think that Mike did a great job with the lyrics. Shout out Nate. This was redone as Sidewalk Surfing by Jan and Dean. So you're listening. There you go. And the title was also used for that book about Brian West. I've never read it, but I know it's called Catch Wave. I've heard it's good. But yeah,
It's great book.
I really love the song. I think it works great on the album as the second track kind of picks up the pace a little bit. It's a great mid-tempo song. Great production, great vocals. Just a very fun song.
Shout out the little keyboard solo. I love that. Or the organ solo.
Yes. Yeah, so I'm kind of with Riley on this one. This one used to not do a whole lot for me. I kind of just viewed it like it's an okay just track, but it wasn't one I'd ever come back to. But honestly, it's really grown on me over time. I definitely see the appeal of it. I think the production really lifts this one. I love the harp on it, like you guys mentioned. I love that little organ solo. That's very cool. I think Mike does a really great lead vocal on it during the verses. Brian sounds really great during the chorus. And yeah, I think it's a really great early song. I wouldn't say it's one of my favorites of like their more popular early songs, but I do think it's a really solid track and it's a good way to follow up Surfer Girl. So strong second track in the album for sure.
All right, next song we have is a Surfer Moon. In Jim's book, it kind of labeled this as like the sequel to Surfer Girl, and I kind of see it a little bit, but I think the production on this one is easily kicks Surfer Girl's production's ass. And I love Surfer Girl. Maybe I'd argue maybe that's even like a better song, but this one is so beautiful. I love the string arrangements. It's the first time Brian's really digging into that area. I mean, he had a little bit of like orchestration on some of his other like side projects and stuff, but this is the first Beach Boys song with an actual like string section in the back. I'm glad that he took this one from Bob and Vicky or Bob and Sherry, whoever the hell Bob was working with at the time.
Both.
Because I feel like this really does work on this album that is full of so many beautiful ballads. And it's just a gorgeous song. And I love Brian's vocal on it. There's really not much else you can really say because every song on this album, at least in my opinion, has great production, great arrangements, and great vocals. And it's just kind of the standard for the Beach Boys. But yeah, I love the Surfer Moon. I love little the dun 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 dun.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
like it sounds like almost like I don't know what it's like a marimba or something at the beginning. But yeah, no, I love the intro. I think the strings are gorgeous. Strings I know sometimes can be kind of not in general, just kind of syrupy or like they can weigh a song down, but they work really well here. What's interesting too is this is one of the first, if not the first Beach Boy song that only has one Beach Boy on it. There are no backing vocals on this song, which is really
Hmm.
Right.
and we have one that's coming up at the end of the record that is also similar to that. Brian does a great job
Oh,
singing.
Boogie Woody.
Yeah, Boogie. Um, we'll get to that too. I will say I know I've often kind of given Brian a hard time for lyrics, but this is a song that he wrote lyrics to. He did a great job with lyrics. The lyrics are beautiful here because he was always, for me at least, he was always very hit and miss as a lyricist. But this is a great song, beautifully written, beautifully produced, beautifully sung, wonderful song.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything you guys said. I think this is a beautiful song. I love the arrangement with the strings and everything. It just sounds amazing. Brian's vocal is really great. Like Matt said, the lyrics are really good on this as well. And I also really love the bridge section. I think it's a really beautiful bridge. And yeah, it's just an amazing song. I do think this is the definitive version of the song. I know there's the Bob and Sherry version and a couple of others, but I really think this is the best version. I think Brian did it fantastic. And three really strong tracks to open this album. It really starts really well. So great third track on Surfer Girl.
Now we got the South Bay Surfer.
And yeah, this is where we take a little nosedive.
Yeah. So here's where we differ, Jake, because while I will not listen to this song on its own,
Okay,
ever,
fair.
ever,
That's fair enough.
ever, I will never listen to the song on its own. But in the context of the album, I fucking love it. It's just I don't know what it is about it because like everything that I like in music, you'd probably like Riley fucking hates this song. No, I love it in the context of the album. I think it's a fun break from Surfer Moon. The boys sound like they're having fun singing it. It's I think I've said this before last season where it was like I on these on their own I don't really like these songs. They are lifted up in quality just by the surrounding songs. And I just found this to be a very charming piece on the album. I'll never go out of my way to listen to it. It's not on my Beach Boys playlist on Spotify, but I am not lifting the needle when this song comes up. It's just a lot of fun. It's old folks at home. For whatever reason, Brian did like 50 different recordings of this song. I don't know what knowing Brian, he probably has some sort of obsession with it, but I don't know, man. It's just a really charming song, and I think maybe it's not like super strong in terms of its own quality. It's surrounded by other great songs and on an album that is a very fun listen to me. I think it's great.
I think I kind of fall in the middle between you two, whereas like I do think it is a lot of fun. I do think it's like they're just you can tell they're like kind of vibing with the song, enjoying it. And I like it in the context of the album. I definitely wouldn't choose to put it on by itself. Um, I just think maybe it's a little half baked. I understand it's just a rewrite of Old Folks at Home, which I know is like an old minstrel song. And I like that it kind of has the tribute to where they grew up, because the South Bay is the area of LA that they grew up in. Um, quite like the drumming on it too, like the opening with the drums. Look out, here comes the South Bay Surfers, but it's just a little half baked for me. But I still think it's fun. So yeah, I like it. I don't love it. Kind of where I'm at with it.
Yeah, so I re-listened to this one for the first time in a while today, preparing for this episode. I do agree with you, Riley. I think in the context of the album, it works okay. Like I don't mind it. I'm not like disgusted by it, but at the same time, again, it's borrowing from an old melody. It's not even an original melody, and I don't really think it's that great of a melody. It's kind of like derpy. I don't know. It's kind of like da, 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 da. Like it just doesn't really do a whole lot for me. Um, I don't think it's one of the stronger tracks in the album. I do think it's an example of a filler song. But like you guys said, in the context of the album, it does fit thematically. And it's not like horrible by any means, but like you guys said, it's not something I'd ever listen to outside the context of the album. And I do think it's definitely the weakest track so far. So by a wide margin. So not super impressed with this one.
Oh, it's filler, but it's like so in your face filler that I think it's great fun.
So
But
basically, Riley's here with it, I'm here with it, and Jake's here with it, which is kind of what I
I'm
expected.
curious what Jake's gonna think of the next one when we got the Rocking Surfer, which I think is pretty funny looking at the album. This is something I realized like recently. More than half the album has the song Surf in it. You
Yeah.
have Surfer Girl, Surfer Moon, South Bay Surfer, Rocking Surfer, Surfer's Rule. Like, I'm starting to notice a little bit of a pattern here.
Well, they were a surf band,
They
so
were America's #1 surf band.
yes, that was on the cover of
I'm
Surfer.
I'm surprised our car club wasn't our surf club.
Well, that's what they were, cars and surfing and girls. Did you ever see that diagram that was like, this is the Beach Boys songs, and
Oh,
these are the surfing
yes,
songs.
yeah.
These are the girl songs. Here's the car songs, and here's the overlap.
But Rocking Surfer, I'm kind of 75-25 split on it, like, because I really like it, but I do have like some faults with it. I think the arrangement for a surf instrumental is a little too tight for a surf instrumental. Because what I really like about some of the other ones, like Surf Jam and some of Dick Dale's, is how like outrageously like punk they were, and how they're like you could it was like in your face jam. It was like scratchy and rough, and that's kind of the appeal.
Yeah.
This one is a little too tight. I think this is where Brian's arrangements actually fault the song a little bit, because it sounds like each person's just playing a part off a music sheet rather than like truly jamming, um, which is probably what happened. But I do like the keyboard though. I love how that's kind of the lead instrument on it. I think it makes it a bit more unique compared to some of the other Beach Boys surf instrumentals. Um, Per usual, the rhythm and lead guitar like blender is great. Love the drumming, but yeah, just a great jam, and or I guess not really a jam, a great song, and I really enjoyed it in the context of the album. But it is missing that energy that some of the other surf instrumentals had. That being said, in the context of the album, I think it's great. I think it's a good way to keep the flow going from South Bay Surfer and into the next song. So I like it, but wish it was a bit more, I guess, punk or like loose.
Loose. Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, it's fine. I think it's fine on the album. Wouldn't choose to put on by itself. I think you're kind of right where like it's a bit too polished, whereas like I think like the best surf rock instrumentals are a bit more on the punk garagey side where you're just kind of like jamming. This is a bit definitely more tight, polished. But I will say I do think that the keyboard is what makes the song. That keyboard is sound is amazing. So I think it's enjoyable, but I do think at the end of the day it is just a filler track, albeit a very enjoyable filler track.
Yeah, this one doesn't do a whole lot for me. I think, like you mentioned, Matt, I do think the organ or the keyboard is pretty cool on it. I think that definitely makes it distinctive from some of their other instrumentals. But comparing this to something like Surf Jam from Surfing USA, I think that's a lot more fun. This just kind of feels like Riley said. It feels very tight. It's not loose enough. It just feels very. I don't know. It just kind of it comes and it goes. Like after it ended, I didn't really remember much from it other than like, oh, I like the sound of the organ on this. So it didn't do a whole lot for me. And yeah, it's just not one of my favorite instrumentals from the group for sure.
Oh man. No,
Are
I'm
you,
with you.
I don't hate it. I just like it
Wait,
just doesn't.
wait. Which one do you like better? Honky Tonk or Rocking Surfer?
Oh Jesus.
um
I
I
gotta
was
re I gotta re-listen to Honky Tonk. Honestly, I think I'm gonna go Honky Tonk because I can remember more from it. I remember that guitar line, like that. I can remember that, so I'm gonna go Honky Tonk.
hmm,
Yeah, but I do like the organ on Rocking
Dude,
Surfer.
the keyboard or organ, it fucking slaps it.
Rockin' Surfer.
Yeah, you know what? I think I'm gonna go rock. We'll go Rocking
Keyboard.
Surfer by a hair, but I gotta re-listen
Honk
to
is
it.
just whatever to
By a
me.
hair on Mike Love's head. So like barely there.
And we haven't
Or non-existent. Yeah.
next song.
Little Deuce Coupe, or as David Marks would say,
Little
Little Deuce Shit, or Little Deuce Shit.
Little Douche Kit, I think.
No, it was Little Deuce Shit. Um, Funny story. This was like in the little in between period before he like fully quit the band, and like where he like when he said I quit, and Murray's like I fucking dare you, and then you have him like actually leaving. He was a fucking menace, dude, because apparently on stage he would sing Little Douche Shit instead of Little Deuce Coupe just to like fuck with Murray, which I'll give him props for that. That's mad funny. But as for Little Deuce Coupe, it's a classic. It's a great song. I think the my truly my only fault with this one is how short it actually is. Uh,
Yeah, it is pretty
it's,
short.
it's kind of like you ever see the meme where it's like, oh, we're gonna make the greatest song ever. Let's make it a minute and a half, and it just flies by. But At the same time, though, it doesn't really overstay its welcome, and it kind of it's one of those songs that it fits the arrangement perfectly. Where maybe it does need to be a minute and a half, but I love the little bounciness to it. I think that was really cool. That boogie woody little groove to it. Sorry, boogie woogie. My bad. That like ragtime kind of piano to it. I love it. Apparently, Dennis had a really hard time doing the drums for this one though, because it's a very specific drum pattern.
Hmm.
Uh,
It's a 12 bar.
Almost said that potentially it was not him on drums, which is something you kind of see in this album as you see some studio musicians start to take effect into it. So I wouldn't be shocked if there was another drummer for the studio version, but it's fine. Um, I love the hook on it, the "Smell little disco, you don't know." I think that's one of their greater hooks. I think it's kind of one that's easily forgotten in their catalog because I feel like for a song that was a sizable hit and is like one of their like most, I guess, memorable songs, it's not really talked about a whole lot in the Beach Boys fandom that much. And maybe it's just because it's a car song or whatever, but I
Yeah.
really like it. I like the chord progression. I love the energy to it. I love the little thing they would do in concert where it's like, we're gonna show you how the Beach Boys do a Beach Boys song.
Yeah, and then it's like
We got Penny Wilson on the drums,
yeah.
Carl lead guitar Wilson. I love that though. That's really cool. So I like Little Deuce Scoop. I wish it was longer, but at the same time, I think it doesn't overstay its welcome. So
Yeah.
great song.
Yeah. It's a very fun song. Roger Christian did a great job with the lyrics. Mike does a good vocal. Though I will say I always thought that the way in the concert he's like a pair of wings. Like I thought that was kind of cringy, but hey, it's Mike Love. It kind of comes with the territory at this point. But yeah, no, it's a very fun song. It's got a nice bluesy kind of like tight um sound to it. Like not sound, but like like a progression vibe, if you will. But yeah, it's like you said, it's a great song. Probably my favorite of the car songs, I'd say, at least up to this point. Um, my favorite is coming on a future album, but yeah,
Is it
really,
Riley's favorite song of all time?
that's a good one. I don't know if I really think of that one as much of a. I know it's a car song. I don't know if I really think that one is much of a car song. I was thinking, "Don't Worry, Baby," but I Get Around is great too. But yeah, Lil Deuce Coupe. Yeah, it's a great way to end off the side. Very fun song. Very
It,
very.
it reminds me a lot of Dion's The Wanderer with the
Yeah, The Wanderer. Yeah, I'm the Wanderer. I have not heard that. That's been a minute since I've heard that song. Great song.
Yeah, I love Little Deuce Coupe. I think it's one of the strongest tracks in the album. Like Matt said, it's one of my favorite car songs as well by the band. I love the lyrics from Roger Christian, and just a really great melody on this. I love the way Mike sings it. I love the verses. I love the backing vocals during the verses, like the Deuce Coupe backing vocals. I really like that a lot. And yeah, it's just a really fun song. Like Riley said, it doesn't outstay its welcome. It's quick, but it gets the job done. And I can see why it's one of their most beloved early songs. I think it's really great and has a really catchy and fun melody. So one of my favorites on the album for sure.
All right. So we're getting to side two. We're starting with what is one of my favorite Beach Boys songs. It was in my top 10. It still is in my room. Um, this is, I guess, where you can like start the clear path to Pet Sounds
Mm-hmm.
with this song. Not only with like the tight arrangements and vocal harmonies, but also just with the general themes. Like this is like for 1963, this is a remarkably depressing song. It's just really like it's like melancholic, but also so beautiful. It's one of those songs where like you kind of however you feel about it can change like depending on your mood. Like you can see it as like a really sad song, and but also like a really happy song, I guess. And it's that I think that's kind of what makes takes like a good song and makes it a great one. It's one of those things that does that. But I love the guitar on it, the dun 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 dun, like that little arpeggios. I love the vocal harmonies. It's just gorgeous. I can talk about the song all day, but as with all of Brian's classic ballads, there's everything that can be said about them probably already has been. And if you really wanted to argue, I could potentially see this as one of Brian's first, I guess, masterpieces of a song.
Mm-hmm.
And shout out Gary Usher. He definitely deserves a mention. The more you kind of look into their relationship and how they work together as songwriters, the more you see his influence. And I really wish that their partnership was able to continue. kind of past 1964 because a song like this coming out of their partnership shows that they could have really made some incredible stuff in the mid 60s.
Yeah, very beautiful track. I love the intro where it's like the three brothers coming in. It's like Brian and then Dennis joins him and then Carl joins him. I think that's a really good throwback to when they were, growing up, sharing the same room and they would sing together. I think this is a song too that has those very introspective lyrics that I think anybody who's a bit of an introvert, or I think anybody who just sometimes, likes to just kind of get away from the world for a bit and just like to just, be in their room and just kind of like be alone can relate to, which I think for 1963 is pretty incredible, honestly, because like, especially when you think of like popular music back then, it was a lot of like novelty songs and very like shallow stuff, and this is pretty deep. I think it's still pretty deep by today's standards, let alone 1963. Just absolutely gorgeous. The harmonies are gorgeous, sends chills up your spine. It's so beautiful. And I think I'll just end on what David Crosby said about the song.
Hmm.
In My Room was the defining point for me. When I heard it, I thought, I give up. I can't do that. I'll never be able to do that. Kind of says it all.
Yeah, I love this song. I do think it's one of Brian's greatest ballads and one of his most personal songs, especially early on. Like you guys mentioned, I love like the deep and introspective lyrics from Brian. And like you said, Matt, as a more like introverted person, you can really relate to the lyrics, like using your room as like an escape from the world where it's just you and your mind. And yeah, I see why people love this song. I think it's beautiful. I love the harmonies. Like you said, I love how the vocals come in at the start. I think that's really cool. The arrangement there. And I love the bridge section. One of my favorite early bridges from Brian. I think it's beautiful, especially like the laugh at yesterday part. I really like that a lot. And yeah, I mean, that's it's an incredible song and one of their most strongest early ballads, in my opinion. I absolutely love it. Masterpiece of a song.
Yeah, the bridge in general is just great.
The, the bridge blows me away every time. Like I love the song, but whenever it gets to the bridge, I'm like, man, this song is good. Like
and it's one of those songs that's both like melancholic and yet kind of inspirational at the same time.
right, like
That's
it's
what
not
I said.
as Mike would say, it's not a downer.
Oh no, you're right, Riley. It is. It's like it's kind of like it has like that bittersweet optimism, if that makes sense. Like it's
Yeah,
like kind of contradictory with itself, but yet it works.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like with a lot of Brian's like ballads, you could say that for all of them. Please Let Me Wonder, which is my second favorite Beach Boys song, next to Round Round Get Around.
Does that mean
Yeah,
one?
that's like bittersweet optimism, or
Yeah.
some like Don't Worry Baby, bittersweet optimism.
I kind of see that with like Let 'Em Run Wild too. It's kind
Yeah,
of that's more of like a mid-tempo
but
song.
that's kind of what makes Brian's ballads so special, is that you have that like you can perceive the song whatever way you kind of want to. Especially with these earlier ones too, where like maybe not so much this one, but like they're like ballads about like going to a hamburger stand. And like that's kind of like in some weird way, maybe I might sound a little too much like Nate here. It's like kind of what makes them beautiful is that they're kind of about that, because then you can kind of perceive them in whatever way you want.
Finding the beauty in the small things in life, right?
Yeah. I also think it's like one last thing. I think it's a cool like contrast between the songs too. Like you go from like Little Deuce Coupe, a really fun, upbeat song, a car song. And then you go into this deeply personal ballad. Like they're two very different songs, but I think the contrast actually works really nicely where it's like it's a good variety. So like you get the fun sing-along songs and you also get the deeply personal, emotional songs. So I think this album in a way has something for everybody. So
And dude, it's besides like the actual songwriting, the production is fucking incredible.
Mhm.
isn't there like that harp at the beginning, too? The harp and everything. Yeah, it's very well produced song. All right, what's next, Riley?
Hawaii, Hawaii. I love this one. I love Hawaii. I love Brian's falsetto on it. That's one of those things that Jake can't ruin for me. Unlike Lana, he can't ruin this one. I love
I
the
ruined
falsetto.
Lana, not Jake. So
I don't care. Jake can ruin a lot. Jake has ruined a lot of songs for me. Not this one though. I love the falsetto on it. I think it's maybe not so much inventive, but anytime Brian hits that high chest voice to falsetto, it's beautiful. Um, I love the verses. It's like, don't worry what town you're from. Don't tell me that they got bigger waves. I think that's one of my a similar vocal to Mike's on a County Fair, honestly, where it's like a bit like, oh no, it's Dennis singing, isn't it? It's Dennis.
no, this is Mike. Dennis is
Um,
our
oh, you
sorry,
know what? I think what I've heard is actually both of them singing. I think. I might be wrong.
You might hear Dennis's backing vocals. He doesn't do a lead, not on this one.
No, I think it's actually both of them. I swear to God, it's both.
Wikipedia says Love and B. Wilson as the lead vocal.
God damn it. Regardless, I think it's a very charming vocal. Um, has that kind of youthful energy to it. This is before Mike lost all his hair, so I mean he's definitely still a bit useful, or not useful, youthful. Um,
He hadn't gotten bitter yet.
yeah, he hadn't gotten bitter. He wasn't going, well, he was going, but he wasn't going. So he still has that youthful energy to it. I think the chorus and the hook is so in your face, Jake, like so in your face that it's hard not to like it. I don't know. I think this song is so charming. There's a lot of energy to it. It's the band at their young peak, and I love it.
Yeah, I think it's very fun. It's got a lot of youthful energy. Mike's vocal on this one almost sounds like a little bit like trying to think of what the word I'm looking for. Like it's almost like something he's like almost kind of like losing his voice in parts, but that's what I kind of like about it. It's like,
Strained, maybe strained a
strained.
little.
Yes, thank you. It's a little bit strained, but it works. Works for the song. I love Brian's falsetto too. That's when he was really young and the falsetto was like very probably in its purest state. A couple things I want to add to this. Riley mentioned after what you mentioned is this is one of the first songs that has Hal Blaine on parts. I think it's a mix of Hal and Dennis on this one. And apparently it was released as a single in Australia and it made #2 on the charts. Did not know that, but apparently this was played a lot, they said, when the Beach Boys toured Australia in early '64. And I know they were in Australia when the Beatles first showed up on Sullivan, which is pretty cool. But yeah, I really enjoy it. I think it's very fun. It's a nice lifter upper, if you will, after In My Room. You know, you kind of have like this nice fun song coming after that song that's a little bit on the heavier side. I think it's a lot of fun personally. All right, Jake, let's hear the takedown.
So I don't even want to take it down because like I re-listened to it today for the first time in a while. Um, Honestly, I think it's fine. Like the verses are fine. I like Mike's vocal on them. Like you said, Matt, it's kind of a unique vocal from Mike, which I think makes it more distinctive, but I have no problem with that. I think Brian's falsetto sounds a little whiny to me. I find it grating. I think it's a little too repetitive. It's the same thing, the Hawaii. I don't know. I don't love the way that he sings it. I don't think I'm alone in this because I've heard a couple of other people say the same thing before. I know there's also people that love this song. Obviously, Australia seemed to love this song. It was a top 5 hit there, but yeah, I don't know. Usually I love Brian's falsetto. I think he had an incredible falsetto, but on this one, it just comes off as a little whiny to me. And I remember when Sirius XM had their Beach Boys station going, I remember my dad told me, he's like, I heard a song and I did not like it at all. And I'm like, oh God, what song was it? And he said Hawaii. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. But again, re-listening to it though, I don't hate it. I like Mike's verses. And honestly, I think if the falsetto sounded maybe a little bit different, I wouldn't mind it as much. Like when Mike does this song live with his band, I'm not like annoyed by it. I'm kind of like, oh, it's Hawaii, you know, but like, I don't know, listening to the studio version, it just kind of irritates me a little bit where it's not a song I'm going to listen to outside the context of the album. So not one of my favorite songs from the band for sure, but I don't think it's bad. I do want to state that I don't think it's a bad song. It's just that falsetto gets on my nerves a little bit. So
You're lucky I was muted. Buzzkill.
Just you and your idol sing falsetto.
I love falsetto.
I love falsetto too. I find this falsetto annoying. I don't know. It's just like
Oh, man, well, I
Hawaii,
find you
Hawaii,
annoying.
straight to Hawaii.
Okay, moving on.
Next one is Surfer's Rule.
It's a genuine fact.
It's genuine. This is easily the biggest grower for me. I fucking love this song. I think the lyrics are so damn cheesy and used to be too cheesy for him. Not Bruce Johnson level cheese, but like they were cheesy. But the melodies and the arrangements absolutely lift this song up so high for me. I think the intro is incredible. It's a genuine fact that the surfers roll, and you have Brian's falsetto soaring in the background. In the hook of "Take it or leave it" is absolutely incredible. While I do wish the lyrics were a bit more, I guess, mature, or if that makes any sense. Fuck it, man. I love this song. It's so catchy, and Four Seasons, you better fucking watch out.
Yeah, no, it's a great song. It's a lot of fun, a lot of energy on this one. I love Dennis's vocal, very earnest vocal from him. That's one thing I always loved about him, very earnest, Splashed on the walls at the school now, surfers. It's been a while since I've heard it, but I remember it goes like that. But yeah, I like Brian's falsetto is great too, on this one. I do like that's like a little bit of like an early diss track, if you will. So, hey, Beach Boys were doing stuff that, hip hop would later basically make a whole industry out of
The Beach Boys invented diss tracks
30, 40 years
six
ago.
years before the Beatles did.
Kinda. What was the first Beatles? Sexy Sadie, right? That was kind of
No,
a diss.
everybody just says the Beatles invent everything. So
No, I know Sexy Sadie was a diss track towards the Maharishi before they rewrote it. But yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. Definitely, I agree with you. It's a bit of a grower. But yeah, it's just a fun track, and I don't really mind the cheesy lyrics on this one just because I think it works so well in the song. Like, they were kind of singing to teenagers, so like, you sing a song about school, and like
being
all
true to
that.
it. Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of fun, lots and lots of fun.
Yeah, so Riley, you'll be happy to hear this one's grown on me quite a bit as well. I think it's pretty solid. I don't think it's one of the strongest tracks from the band's early years, but I do like quite a bit of it. I like how Dennis sings the verses. I really love that take it or leave it part. I think it's a really great little melody there. I think Brian sings that really well. And yeah, I love Brian's falsetto at the end of the song. I like the kind of fun, cheesy lyrics. Again, the first time I listened to this, the lyrics kind of made me cringe as well, but they have grown on me. And yeah, like you said, Riley, Four Seasons, you better believe it. So yeah, I don't think it's one of the strongest tracks in the album by any means, but I think in the context of the album, it's a pretty enjoyable song, and it's unique in that Dennis sings part of the lead on it. So fun track, fun track.
Anybody who says "Love You" is their favorite album should not be cringing at these lyrics. Just saying.
Well, this is before I even got into Love You, though.
Okay, fair enough. Because like I'm just saying, like, like I like "Love You" too, but woo, some of those lyrics,
Jake likes roller skating, child, but he can't get around to
the ribbon
Hawaii.
in her hair, right? I mean, that's like a song I would.
Okay, well,
never
Riley,
play
Hawaii has nothing to do with the lyrics, though.
No, Hawaii is just the falsetto. Which, okay, to be fair, I could see the falsetto being a little grating, but I think
I can't. I think it's absolutely lovely.
I mean, I kind of see both sides here. But okay, to be fair, if you hadn't listened to "Love You" yet, fine, that's fair. But
It's just a hater. He's just a hater.
call me a hater because I want you.
Jake's more of a noble surfer over Hawaii.
Oh, I think I'd take Hawaii over Noble Surfer.
Oh God, yeah, Noble Surfer is just a disaster.
noble.
Freaking, I have never heard a more That's like one of the more discordant songs in the Beach Boys catalog. It just does not work at all. That and the stupid Finders Keepers. That's another mess.
Nah, I actually kind of like Finders Keepers.
Yeah, I'm not. Finders Keepers has its moments.
Finders Keepers is a mess. Like it does have its moments, but it's such a freaking mess.
Yeah,
Anyway,
yes, he said.
Didn't you add that to
three
your,
different songs? It sounds like three different songs.
Finders Keepers?
Well, that's what makes it unique. I think it's that. It's a lot going on. I don't know. I think it's more unique than a lot of the other tracks on there.
Well, we've got it going on for years, right? Okay. Anyway,
Going on when in the mold.
I must I love you.
I love you.
I miss
I love you, baby.
Hey, Four Seasons. You better watch.
All right. Our car club.
Yeah. I'll admit, of all, I don't know if this is like really filler. It's like half filler for me. I like parts of it, but of all, like, I guess the quote unquote filler, this is probably my least favorite, second to South Bay Surfer. I mean, this one's at least like trying to do something new, but I still enjoy it in the context of the album. But I need to listen to this one a bit more. I heard a lot of people say they love this song. It hasn't quite clicked with me fully yet. It's definitely my least favorite on side two. Yes, I like this one less than Boogie Woody. Yeah, it still has to grow on me. I think it is better used in Little Deuce shit. So
Yeah, this is just all right for me. I kind of am with you, Riley. I like parts of I like the drum fills from This Is How Blaine. I like the drum fills from How Blaine. And like I like parts like we'll start a car club, but like as a whole, it just doesn't really work for me. It's just fine. I think it's like fine filler. But then again, the fact that this song was used twice on two different albums kind of frustrates the hell out of me too, because it's like it's just not that great. Like I understand didn't have that much material, but like of all the songs to use twice, this one.
Well, it's not that they didn't have any material, it's that
Car theme.
they wanted a new album out within 4 weeks.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's fair, but it's just like they could just. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. There are many times where they should have just pulled the Beatles and put 11 tracks on an album and just drop something. Now, this is not the worst example of that. There's other examples I could think of down the road, but I never understood that. Why didn't they just do what the Beatles did and just put 11 tracks on an album? I don't know. But anyway, yeah, it's fine. It's fine. It's just nothing really to write home about.
Yeah, for me, this is passable filler at best. I don't hate it. I think it's okay. There's some nice drumming on it. I think, like you said, Matt, from Hal Blaine. I also like the saxophone on it. I think that's pretty cool. But yeah, it doesn't do a whole lot for me. I guess the one part of the song I do kind of like is the "We'll have our jackets on wherever we cruise" line. I like that line. I like how Brian sings that. But yeah, I just kind of feel like just a filler track. And I, like you said, it was reused too, which is like not the strongest track to reuse, but I can see why they reused it given the circumstances. I also read that the backing track for this started out as an unreleased Honey song that was titled Rabbit's Foot, which I thought was interesting. And then it became Our Car Club. We can get in more into the Honey stuff later on in the episode. But yeah, just kind of a passable piece of filler, but not something I'll ever listen to outside the context of the album. So,
All right, we go from probably the worst song in the album to potentially its best, Your Summer Dream. This was written by Brian and Bob Norberg, who at this point were living together.
Mhm.
Um, I'll just get out of the way. I think it's fucking gorgeous. I think it's one of those songs that Brian smartly, used a lack of production to make it sound more beautiful.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, I actually don't think it's Carl doing it. Um, but
It's
it's David doing a rhythm guitar track on an acoustic. What makes it a bit impressive is it's just like jazz chords. It's A major seven. Past that, I probably couldn't fucking tell you. Like I know my chords, but off the top of my head, this is like some wild shit. Um, like these are like major sevenths, like major ninths. I don't think there's a diminished one in here, but it's one of Brian's more complex songs, especially for the early era when most of the songs he were writing were just like 1 4 5 chords, just like major chords. Past all the music theory shit, I think Brian gives a hauntingly beautiful vocal. It's just holy shit, it's gorgeous, and I feel like it perfectly encapsulates the image of sitting by the campfire at night on the beach. Is the best way I can see it.
hmm No, I think you're right. It's a very beautiful track. It is beautifully understated in the production because all it really is just the acoustic guitar, the very subtle drumming, and then Brian's vocal. This is another one with no backing vocals, so it makes it stand out even more. Um, he sings it beautifully. The lyrics are great. This kind of has this song to me is kind of like one of those songs that's kind of like something that you would play at summer's end as things are kind of like winding down and kind of like you've had this like love or whatever, this person you've met on, during summer, and it's like you're trying to like express your feelings for them before it's all gone, and I think that's one thing that the Beach Boys did very well in general, not just on this song. I mean, this song, All Summer Long, Summer's Gone. They did it, they had this like keep an eye on summer. They really did this great thing of like kind of like the melancholy and that like longingness, that wanderlust that you kind of get at like the end of summer. You know what I mean? And I think that this song kind of captures that vibe
Yep,
brilliantly. Beautiful.
absolutely. This is like the song I literally played leaving summer camp this year. Last year it was fuck, I forgot the one I played last year. But yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think it kind of fits in that. It kind of fits in that. Like I said, like that class of like all summer long and
That was the one I played. It was all summer long last year, and this year was Your Summer Dream.
keep an eye on summer, like that kind of like that kind
Yeah.
of. Um, Even Girl Don't Tell Me, I think it fit in there too.
yeah, I absolutely love this song. It's one of my favorite early Beach Boys songs. I think it's absolutely beautiful. I love the simple arrangement with the strumming guitar and just Brian's vocal. I think Brian sings this so beautifully. And yeah, I really love the lyrics too. I think you said it best, Matt. It kind of describes like that feeling you get at the end of summer, at the end of a great thing, like the end of a summer relationship or something like that. But yeah, it's just a really moving song. One of the songs that really moves me emotionally when I listen to it. Um, And yeah, like that line to the sun has almost slipped away. That always gets me too. So yeah, really moving song and one of my favorite early Beach Boys deep cuts. I think it's just absolutely beautiful.
Mm-hmm. And another song that this is not Beach Boys at all, but another song that I think kind of fits that vibe. This was a B-side, Autumn Goodbye by Britney Spears. It was the B-side to Baby
Mm.
One. Kind of fits that like similar vibe of like saying goodbye to like a summer thing and just
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's very melancholic, and also it kind of has like almost like I don't know how to say this, but almost like a proto like indie sound. Like I could picture like a more modern like indie band covering this really well, like just like with the simple arrangement, get like that dreamy like reverb heavy guitar production on it. I feel like it would really work well as like a modern song too. It's one of those songs I think is just timeless. Like the lyrics are so good and it works really. Like I think the Beach Boys obviously did it best, but I think like a artist could cover this and do a really great job too, even today. So
so what you're
Just hope
saying.
it's not like fucking Maniskin where like it becomes a way bigger hit. They've
You want
recorded.
it to, you want like a dream pop.
yes,
I
yes,
want to do arrangement of this.
yes. I love to hear what that sounds like. Yeah,
Yeah, with like the sun drenched reverb and everything. Yeah, that'd be
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. All right.
My
One,
favorite, Boogie Woody. It's not actually my favorite, but I think the one thing that honestly tears this song apart is his placement on the album.
Yes.
I know Matt's gonna say it, um, but I totally agree. If you had literally just shifted this up one slot, I feel like it'd be remembered a lot more fondly. That being said, on its own, I enjoy it. I feel like this has that like a little, maybe not so much punky energy, because again, I feel like the arrangement is a bit tight, but a bit more loose than Rocking Surfer. I prefer Rocking Surfer to this one, but I think this one is still like good fun. Especially when you know that back when they were like kids, Audrey taught Brian like boogie woogie style piano, where it's like like she also taught that to Carl and Dennis, believe it or not, which is pretty cool. Which is where Dennis has a little bit of info on piano. So I mean that's kind of cool. I think it's good fun. It's just kind of screwed by its album placement.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's like a fun kind of raucous track on its own. It should have never ever in a million years been the last track on the record. I think if you like you said you swap it with Your Summer Dream, much better. Much better. And I think it works better coming off of Our Car Club because it's a bit more upbeat and fun. So you kind of have like the three upbeat fun songs, because you have Hawaii, Surfers Rule, and Our Car Club. You have Boogie Woody there, and then you close with Your Summer Dream, which is the best way to close out the record because it's like it thematically fits. So
And sonically it would fit too, because it's one of the slower songs and it's literally just a guitar and Brian.
and some
And
drumming.
it wouldn't ruin like any sound quality.
Yeah, and I just feel like throwing that at the end is just almost like it's like the Secret Life of Arabia on David Bowie's Heroes. It just seemingly comes out of nowhere. Unlike that, I think that song fits better in the context of a discography than this does because this is just a throwaway filler track. So
That's a little too harsh. I mean, I rock with Boogie Woody.
I mean, it's fine for honestly, I'll be totally honest with you. I really think the place on the album really kind of like it made me hate this song for years, honestly, because I hate it where it was on the album. It
Fucking hate Amusement Parks USA. Why does it have to be the third track?
Okay, but that's like a third track or this
I'm messing with you.
you're messing with me. That's the second track on the album, but also like you have to admit that thematically it is kind of like a slap in the face to end with this song. As I've kind of softened my stance on it, as I often do sometimes soften my stance on things, I think it's fun for what it is. I just think it should have been in a different place. So that's my take on Boogie Woody. But if I will admit that for years I hated it because of where it was on the album.
Jake.
yeah, honestly, just another one I re-listened to today for the first time in a long time before doing this episode. Yeah, I honestly kind of agree with you guys though. Like in the context of the album, I think it's a really poor choice to close it, especially at Following Your Summer Dream, which is such a beautiful, moving song. And then it goes into this little like piano do 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 do. It's just a very like odd choice to close the album. But yeah, like Riley said, I actually think the song is kind of fun. It's a fun little instrumental. I don't think it's anything mind blowing. I think it's far from one of their best instrumentals, but I think it's a fun little track. I can see the appeal of it. But it's not something I would listen to outside the context of the album. And again, I think that it's like you guys said, its sequencing on the album is pretty poor. It definitely would have literally anywhere else on the album besides maybe the opening track or the last track would have been a better place for this. It's just not a great way to close the album, which if you looked at other Beach Boys albums, this band does have a history of having some pretty questionable album closers. So definitely not the only poor choice for an album closer. But yeah, I don't hate it. I can see the appeal of it, but not something that I come back to that often. All right, Riley, do you want to get into some of the extra tracks and then maybe talk a little bit about the history regarding the Honeys?
Yeah, I mean, we could just probably start with the Honeys.
Okay.
I talked about it. Gary Usher was dating Ginger. I forgot her actual name. I think that's just like her stage name. And she's like honestly, I think she was a solo singer around that time. She was 16. And then Gary invited her and her cousins to show up at Pandora's Box. Brian meets Marilyn. He starts hanging out with them a lot. He feels very welcome at their house, their home, and they're very musically like devoted family, big into music. They sing, and so Brian ends up wanting to, after the success of Surfing USA and him kind of staying behind in some of the tours, he wanted to kind of focus on producing other artists and other side projects. And the book says, according to Jim, he almost immediately went straight into the Honeys after Surfing USA. Which doesn't shock me because I feel like we know that Brian really liked girl groups, so he kind of saw it as like the parallel to the Beach Boys because like if they are the Beach Boys or the surfers, like I think that's what the term was for like girl surfers or whatever. It was like a honey, like in the song, "Honey's in the Malibu with a shoe in the pier." So that was kind of Brian's idea. However, their first single, while it is, I think, pretty sharply produced, it is yet another rendition of uh, Old Folks at Home and Surfing the Swanee River. As the name of the song is Surfing Down the Swanee River. I think that was the first single. I think it was backed with Shoot the Curl. Yeah, it exists. It's pretty solid, but I can also see why chart wise,
It didn't do anything.
no, not one bit. I think it completely failed to chart. To be fair, I know that first of all, Nick Venet was again producer, and I know that they didn't really promote them that much because they didn't really need to. This was more of like I guess a way to like kind of appease Brian, who was gaining more, I guess, like power within Capitol and production and all the creative control, and it was kind of a way to let him do his thing, kind of shut him up for a little bit. So yeah, the songs I don't think are very strong. I actually think "Shoot the Curl" wasn't even written by Brian. I think it was just produced by him. I think that one's actually stronger. But there is one Honey song that I actually do really like that came out, and it's called "He's a Doll." Um, that came out in 64 or 65. I think it was 64. But I feel like that's Brian going full Spectre. I think the chorus is very catchy. He's a doll, he's a doll, he's a real fine doll, he's a doll. I think that's really catchy. But I think Brian's best stuff with the Rovels came with American Spring, without a doubt.
That's
Yeah.
much.
But I feel like this was Brian almost trying too hard to be Spectre with the Ronettes. Because at this point in 63, Be My Baby had come out and this was Brian's favorite song. So
Yeah, or he was trying to be like
yeah, he was trying to be Spectre.
mhm.
And I think he did have some good stuff with his side projects, and we'll get to that in the next episode, which is probably my favorite batch of like quote unquote side project songs. Um, Mostly with the Survivors, but I think the Honey stuff is interesting. There's some solid stuff, but there was no album that came to fruition just because there was really no success with the singles. They just released a bunch of singles. They're one of those like forgotten girl groups of the 60s. They had some solid stuff. I really like He's a Doll, and I feel like some of their stuff has charm. But honestly, I think most of the charm comes from the fact that it's Brian Wilson Productions and writes rather than like insanely great songs.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. If Brian Wilson didn't touch this, we wouldn't be talking about it today. This is not the Shirelles. This is not the Supremes. This is not the Ronettes. This is not one of like the peak girl groups of the 60s. Like the one thing I will say I did like about the Rovels is I think they had very unique voices, which is kind of cool. I really feel like they have the kind of voice that you probably wouldn't hear too much in popular music today because like everything nowadays is very like they want like the same kind of voice or everything, has like so much vocal, like auto tune or whatever on it that it's just like everybody just kind of sounds similar. So I can appreciate that, and I do appreciate some of Brian's production on these songs, but overall the songs just don't do anything for me. They're just kind of they're here. I listen to them, great. I forget about them 5 minutes later. They are what they are. Like I said, this is just not the peak of like 60s girl groups. But I do agree with you that I think that the best stuff to come with the Ravel sisters would be American Spring in the 70s. But that's just kind of where I'm at with the Honeys.
Yeah, in terms of the Honeys tracks that you guys mentioned, Surfing Down the Swanee River, yeah, it's the stupid South Bay surfer melody. I like Brian's backing vocals on it. I think he's on it. I think it's like a minute in you hear him. I thought that was kind of cool. He's on there, but yeah, it's pretty much just it's that song again. It's old folks at home again, kind of rehashed. It's fine. I think the girls sound fine on it, but doesn't really do that much for me. I agree with Riley. I think "Shoot the Curl" is a stronger song. Actually, I'm surprised to hear that Brian didn't write this because it actually sounds like something that he could have wrote. I think the chorus melody sounds like something he would have wrote. I could also picture Mike singing the verses on this. I'm a little bit indifferent on the girls' vocals. I have to be honest. There's times that I like them, and there's other times that they sound a little weird to me. But like Matt said, that might actually be kind of the charm of them. Like they sound unique for sure. I definitely have to give them credit for that. And I also really like the sound of the guitar on Shoot the Curl as well. I think the guitar sounds really cool on that track in particular. Um, but yeah, besides that, yeah, the other Honey's material, He's a Doll. I haven't heard that one in a while, but I do like it enough where I have it on my Beach Boys playlist. So that is a pretty solid song. I also like the Honeys. I believe they recorded it under the Honeys name in like 1968 or 67. They did a cover of the song Good Night, My Love. And there's like a bootleg of that. I think it's not the best quality recording, but you can find it on YouTube. And it's a really nice cover, really nice string arrangement on that, very nice vocals from the girls. I think Brian produced that, of course. So really beautiful song, maybe a little bit out of touch with the times when that was released, considering that was released like in the late 60s, it probably would have made more sense coming out earlier. But yeah, I think that's a really nice cover. But overall, the Honey stuff, most of it doesn't do a whole lot for me. I agree with you guys that the American Spring material is definitely the better, stronger material from the Rovell sisters. But I can definitely see the appeal of it, and it is cool, obviously, that Brian produced and wrote a lot of these tracks. So, Riley, did you want to touch on that other song that Brian
Yeah,
is?
so there was one song that Brian did with the Ravels. First of all, Shoot the Curl. That was
Yeah, yeah.
I just looked into it. I was right. It was written by Diane and Ginger.
Sandra Glance is her
That's
act.
Ginger's real name.
Yeah, that's her real name. Yep.
There is one track though, but I like even more than He's a Doll, which it has a lot of fucking charm to it. And I am almost not almost, I am upset that it was never fully realized, and it's called Marie.
Mm-hmm.
That's the
It's
best one.
just such a fucking like, it's just a good time of a song. I love the little hook, Maria, Marie, Marie, Marie. And to be fair, I probably wouldn't have that much charm or appeal if Brian wasn't singing the chorus, but I think Brian and the girls sound great together. I'm kind of shocked they didn't do more of that. I feel like that was a big missed opportunity with the Ravels. I know they were on Beach Root Your School as like the cheerleaders, but I feel like actual like genuine vocal harmonies with the girls is a big missed opportunity. But Marie is just like it's such a fun song, such a fun jam. Why wasn't this released? Like I can see why it wasn't released with the Beach Boys. Maybe it wouldn't fit their catalog very well. But with the Honeys, like we're Brian, this is more like a Brian Wilson passion project. Why didn't he release this? It's just I don't know. It's such a that hook, man. It's so good, and Brian sounds like he's having a good time recording it. So
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that's definitely the best one. Very fun, very bouncy. Just a great time. I agree with everything you said. That's the best one of the ones I listened to, at least from the Honeys.
Yeah, I love this one as well. I think I first heard this one on that Rarities bootleg that Brian Wilson Projects released. I think I downloaded the whole thing and listened to the whole thing, and this was the track that stood out to me the most. I think it's really catchy and fun. Like Riley said, I love Brian's vocals on it. I love the girls' backing vocals on the Marie, Marie. It's really catchy and fun. And yeah, the song should have been released. I think it's stronger than a lot of the tracks that the band actually did put out as singles. And I don't know if it would have been successful, but I do think musically it's a lot of fun. So I enjoy this track quite a bit, and I can definitely see the appeal on it.
yeah, so one of the other Brian Wilson side projects around the time, kind of continuing from last time, is Bob and Sherry. Brian released a couple of singles with them. I don't really know the whole history, like, because I know it was Bob and Vicky with Vicky Hale, and then it was just Vicky Hale, and then whatever the fuck happened. I don't fucking know.
Vicky,
I'd have to reread the book. It's one of those things where it's so niche of a subject, like I can't just remember this tiny specific details. When Bob Norberg,
Jim.
Jim would know. Jim would definitely know. Oh, but they did release a song called "The Big Beat," which
They sure.
Matt pointed out to me. It's very reminiscent of "Do You Remember," and I'm 99.9% sure. I'm sure somebody would correct me if I'm wrong, but I am 99.9% sure this was the precursor to my favorite song from All Summer Long, "Do You Remember," which, by the way, in case you didn't realize, I was joking. I fucking hate that song. But this one I kind of like. There's a lot of appeal to it. It's just a little less memorable compared to some of the other stuff that Brian was doing with his side projects. But I don't know why it was the name of the 63 compilation. It's
I
just
don't know.
random.
I think it just sounds like a good name for a compilation, honestly. I will say for this, the big beat, yeah, I think it's better than Do You Remember in the sense that it is a little bit more loose and it's not as what?
Jake's disagreeing.
Oh, you disagree? Well, okay, so Do You Remember? My issue I've always had with that song is I appreciate the homage, paying respects to the people that came before you. I think that's wonderful. But it's done in such a shit eating grin way. It's like almost like a Disneyland attraction, like Elvis Presley and da, 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 and I just never liked that. And this I think is a little bit more loose and a little bit more kind of just like free flowing. And I think that's a little bit fun, a little bit more fun, but I still think it's just kind of there. I don't think it's like the most memorable thing in the world, but I can at least respect it for what it's trying to do. So that's how I feel about the big beat.
Okay, so I do want to clarify. I'm not even a big fan of "Do You Remember." That's one of the lesser tracks on All Summer Long for me as well. But if we're comparing the two, no, I do prefer "Do You Remember." I think this song is actually this version is a little annoying. Actually, I don't like the big beat, big beat. It gets on my nerves. I listened to it twice, and yeah, that just kind of annoys me. And yeah, I mean, I can see the issue you guys have with "Do You Remember" with kind of the corny lyrics. That song's grown on me a bit, but still, it's not what I'm listening to outside the context of All Summer Long. I think it's again like a passable filler track. But yeah, the big beat. Can't say I'm ever going to listen to this one again. It didn't do anything for me. So
All right. So the last two, I'm gonna save the best for last. Another one I want to mention. We've already talked about this song. It's another Bob Norberg and Brian co-write. Is it's Back Home, and I love this version way more than the 1976 version, and it's not even close. Because this one is a very just standard bluesy track, very simple. But Brian's, I agree with what Matt said earlier. I think 1963 was honestly Brian's peak as a vocalist. I think his falsetto is there, and his voice is so still very youthful. It just sounds incredible. And he took what is a very simple song and made it so gorgeous. Like it just has no right being this catchy with Brian's voice. So I much prefer this version of Back Home with Brian's youthful voice.
Yeah, no, I think it's like you said, it's very bluesy, it's fun. And I feel like it works better when he sings it younger, whereas like by the time he's singing it yeah, it's like, it's like he's like croaking through the song and it just almost like just doesn't work. Like I think it works a lot better in his young boys. And I am of the opinion, and people may not agree with me on this, but I feel like after about 1975, Brian's voice went downhill, and honestly sometimes hard to listen to. Like it's like just heartbreaking to hear how bad it had gotten, quite frankly. Whereas like here it's just like hearing it, like you said, when he's in his youth, it's like him in his prime, and it works so much better. So yeah, I much prefer the 1963 version of Back Home, though I will say it's been a minute since I've listened to it. I can't remember the last time I listened to that box set in full. I have the box set somewhere. I'm not getting it right now.
yeah, I'm kind of with you, man. I haven't heard this one in a long time, so I feel like I can't really comment on it too much. I do have to give it a re-listen. I do come back to the Back Home from 15 Big Ones more, and I also listened to the live version that they included on Feel Flows. I believe they included it on. Yeah, Brian's vocal on that one is rough for sure. For me, I actually find it kind of charming and fun, even though the vocal is rough. I find it kind of fun. I have to re-listen to the original I just know that like the first couple times I've heard it, it didn't really do too much for me. But I have to give it another listen for sure before I can say anything too much. So
You like the 15 Big Ones version better?
I have to re-listen before I can say that. But that's the version that I come back to. Yeah, I think it's fun.
I don't know. 15 Big Ones has always been such a mixed bag for me, honestly. I think there was someone that tried to say it was better than Pacific Ocean Blue once, and I like almost lost it. That was the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. But hey, everybody's got their own opinion. So you know what? You know,
All right. The last one I wanted to talk about, and I said I'd save the best for last because I think this was one of those songs that I am to this day still shocked it was not released. Um, but when you look at it, it kind of makes sense. Thank him. The recording of it was done at Western apparently, and according to one of the first people who worked there, apparently there was a lot of songs like Thank Him that kind of surfaced around with Brian, and he would just record them on acetates. And I wouldn't be shocked if there's still some from Western that just haven't been found yet, or a lot of those acetates that just worn out or they were never found. This one was found in 2005. That's where it resurfaced. Then it was finally, I guess, like quote unquote remastered and released on the Big Beat in 2013. But this song, just like a lot of the ballads he was writing around this time, absolutely gorgeous, great melody, and just great vocal performance, and of course, a killer bridge. But I think something that does give this song more charm is honestly just how like dark and haunting it sounds because it
Yeah,
is a bit scratchy because it came from an acetate and not an actual recorded vinyl pressing. But apparently, there's a lot more of these like just ballads or just general songs rolling around from the time that maybe to this day haven't yet been found, which is honestly incredible. But that kind of makes sense is if Brian was writing a lot of just like random material, recording it quickly, and then just kind of just not really using it on why it just never showed up because there's just a bunch of songs. But I think this one's very haunting. I think the melody on it is great. I love the acoustic guitar. Yeah, I think that's just kind of it's similar to Your Summer Dream. It gives that like slight edge that kind of makes it a bit more haunting rather than just beautiful. But
but
great
yes,
song.
yeah, I agree. Very pretty song. Low sound quality aside, which I get, it's an acetate. Beautiful sounding song. Just very haunting, very melancholic, very well sung. Why it was stuck in a vault or never finished, I don't know, but that's very common with this group. And I have to admit, and I hate myself for admitting this, I actually listened to the Day Limbs version, and we all know how I feel about AI.
No way.
I have to admit, it was beautifully done. It really was, because it was nice to hear it polished up and really fleshed out. And it's nothing against Day Limbs in particular. I know he does good work. I struggle a lot with this whole using AI to craft voices out of thin air when there hasn't been consent given. Having said that, listening to it as a curiosity, it was beautifully done. And it's kind of like I guess it kind of fills that it quenches the thirst for like, hey, what if we actually finish this and put it on something? But yeah, beautiful song.
yeah. This song, I echo everything you guys said. I think it's a hauntingly beautiful track. Like you guys said, I think the low quality of the recording actually gives it more of a haunting and moving vibe, or moving sound, I should say, especially like, knowing everything that this band would go through in the future, all of Brian's struggles and just the whole up and down roller coaster that this band went through over the years. So to hear this very like haunting sounding early unreleased song, it's just very moving. And yeah, why this sat in the vault, why this wasn't finished, I don't know. I think it's an incredible track. I love the vocals on it. Love it sounds like a very simple arrangement with the strumming guitar and yeah, just a very moving song. And like you guys mentioned as well, really great bridge on it. And yeah, I wish that they had done something with this. I wish it had gotten an official release at the time. I have heard the Day Limbs version. I think he did a great job with it. I do come back to this Beach Boys version more just because it moves me more. Just it's that fact that it's the original, it's the band, it's the original recording, and that haunting vibe that it has also really moves me. So yeah, I like this one a lot. I have it on my Beach Boys playlist. I downloaded it, I think, a while ago. And yeah, I think it's a beautiful, beautiful track.
Now
Yeah,
that
there's a
AI is a thing, sorry to cut you off, but now that AI is a thing, maybe they could use AI to kind of clean it up a little bit. Not like obviously like crap vocals, maybe like kind of clean up some of the lo-fi-ness of it.
what I really like about that like, I guess the like, lo-fi acetate is the vocals are so like they're like drenched in reverb. Like this
Yes, yes.
it adds honestly almost a better quality than what probably like a cleaned up version would sound like. It kind of
Hmm.
reminds me a little bit of shoegaze, honestly. Like it's so reverb heavy, and but it sounds great. And I could honestly like just like how Jake said he could see like Your Summer Dream being a modern
Dream
indie.
pop. Yeah.
I could see this one being like a shoegaze song, done by like Slow Dive or something. So
Yeah, no, I think the thing about acetates is that they're usually used as more for like demos or something. So
right.
they tend to degrade very fast. So again, it adds like that haunting vibe. And I kind of feel the same way too. Like when you listen to those early like Quarrymen, like In Spite of All the Danger, and the cover of That'll Be the Day, I feel like the same way.
Makes you feel so
Yeah.
nostalgic.
It does.
It's
It makes you feel extremely nostalgic.
It's like these guys were like so young at the time, especially like I said, this is like for me, this is Brian's peak year for vocals or just like for his voice. And like hearing it him so young and like not at all well, obviously like he's had like some trouble with like his father at this point, but in general, with like compared to everything else that happens next, it hasn't happened to him yet. And he's still youthful, full of energy. He's still like that young guy making his name in the music industry. And it's just like so nostalgic and so haunting to just like hear him so young and drenched in reverb. It's beautiful.
Can I
Yeah.
say one thing too about him? One thing I want to say about Surfer Girl, and I know we'll get to our final thoughts on it, is I think that Brian getting that production credit really was super influential and impactful, not just for him as a producer, but also for artists to come, for artists to be able to get a production credit and really get creative control over the work. I want to say the Beach Boys were one of the very first groups. I don't know. Did Buddy Holly get production credit on his stuff? Because I know he was really big in the studio too.
I
Or
don't think so, but you're on the right track with what you're saying though. You're absolutely right because and I read this in Jim's book when Brian and Murray marched into Capitol's office, and honestly more Murray than Brian argued for Brian to have creative control over the album, over like the direction of the band. It was huge. It was
Mhm.
the first time anybody did that thing. It honestly scared some of the people at Capitol. Because
Mhm.
this first of all, this would be a huge risk because they're still in that mindset of like Mike Love, I guess, where it's like don't fuck with the formula. Like this is just one of those fads that's gonna die out, and if we give this guy creative control, this could cost us a lot of money. And but he got the control. He argued for it, and honestly, it was one of the biggest changes in the music industry at that point because
Yeah.
then you have more artists similar to Brian, like Bob Dylan and the Beatles getting their control, and this was just one of the biggest moments in music history. Well, it made them more money, and the Beach Boys weren't one of those fads
Yeah.
that stayed around for the next 2 years. They'd stay around for, I don't know, like the next 60. Um,
I think
Still
it
cruising.
Still cruising.
I think it was Carl who said, like, Capitol, like, we're unsure, but what could they say? Brian made great records. And also, too, like, not just the Beatles and Dylan, but David Bowie, Prince, Stevie
Yeah,
Wonder,
but I was saying like around this
Marvin
time, that
Gaye.
set the standard.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm saying, but like all these artists that came after and after and after. You're right. It set the standard, and it was like all these artists that came after. Like, imagine like how different popular music would look if artists didn't, start getting that creative control. Who knows?
Or Sabrina Carpenter's.
I knew it. I was waiting for it. I knew it was coming.
Isn't it crazy how music's regressed? We're just going back to that. But yeah, it's an incredible moment, and I do think though ultimately it kind of did lead to Brian's downfall, but I think what we got out of it far exceeds what didn't and what happened after that. But
Yep. So, do we want to talk about the chart performance of Surfer Girl?
yes, so Surfer Girl charted peak position US Billboard Top 200 at number 7. And I think that's actually kind of nuts, all things considered, because this is a very ballad heavy album.
Hmm.
And really the only like fast, I guess, quote unquote single was Little Deuce Coupe, which granted that also did great.
Hmm.
But I
Yep.
think that just kind of pushed Brian's creative mindset forward a little bit more. He can do these ballads that he becomes known for. And down the line, we'll get Pet Sounds and Today.
Yep. It was also certified gold by the RIAA. So that means it sold about, I think it was 500,000 copies.
Yeah.
sales back then. In the UK, it was released later on in 67, reached number 13. So that was around the time that they started getting really, really popular in the UK. I think that it was skipped at first. So if I'm not mistaken with their UK releases, Surf and Safari came out in 63, didn't do a damn thing. Then I think they Capital held EMI, which was Capital's European label, held them back for a little bit until 64 when I Get Around blew up in Europe. Then they started putting, I think, starting with All Summer Long, they started putting out the albums in Europe. And then when Pet Sounds blew up in the UK, they started re-releasing a lot of the back catalog. And so that's, I think, when Surfer Girl came out. And by that point in time, the UK was so in love with them, they were buying up all the product. And also Pitchfork, our favorite website, listed this at number 193 on the greatest albums of the 1960s. That's pretty cool.
It's one of my favorite Beach Boys albums. I think when we did the list all the way back in the beginning, I think it was at number 6.
Yeah, it was in the top.
I've gotten higher.
I don't remember the exact listing, but I know you had it in your top 10, which I think it's
in my top. Yeah, it might be higher for me now. I'd have to look at that list. But there is one quote I found. It says that it's by Scott Schneider. He said, Brian's continuing growth as a composer and producer. This is like a big advancement with that. And he also said, Catch a Wave was Brian's most ambitious surf number to date. And In My Room was a startling demonstration of Brian's willingness to confront his fears into a song.
Yeah, that's well said. I will say, too, that for me, as far as the Beach Boys catalog is concerned, this and All Summer Long are probably the two best pre-Today albums. These are two of the only albums I would probably recommend a new fan listen to maybe in full, at least maybe after Endless Summer. I still like to recommend Endless Summer first for like the early stuff, just because I do think that while these albums are great, they are still a little on the patchy side for someone that maybe isn't quite so initiated into the group. But I think that I would not feel misgivings about recommending this to someone new. Surf and Safari, I don't think you should be recommending to anybody, like, unless they already are kind of, fine-tuned to some of the eccentricities, because some of the songs in there have not held up well. But I think this is a beautiful record. Like I said, for me, the first great Beach, but like I said earlier, is like the first great Beach Boys album. And I think that this was really, as you've said before, Riley, kind of like the stepping stone to what eventually would lead to Today and Pet Sounds and everything. And I think that this is just really kind of like where you start seeing Brian's genius really start to show itself.
Closing thoughts, Jake?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I would agree with you guys that, like, in terms of their pre-Today albums, this is definitely one of my favorites. Of their first 4 albums, this is definitely my favorite. I think there's some of the greatest songs the band ever did are on here, and I think that even the more filler, lesser tracks on here, a lot of them have enjoyable moments. So I think it's a really solid album considering the time it came out and how quickly it really shows how quickly the band was developing too, how quickly Brian was developing as a songwriter and producer. A lot of these songs, again, like beautiful arrangements with Surfer Moon and In My Room and Your Summer Dream with that really melancholic sound. It's just a really solid album. And there's a lot to like on here. And like Matt said, I wouldn't feel uncomfortable showing somebody who's new to the band this album, maybe after Endless Summer, of course. But I think there's a lot to like on here and some really cool deep cuts as well. So it's a solid early effort from the group and a sign of things to come in the future for sure, especially those more moving ballads. Definitely a precursor to some of the stuff Brian would do in the mid-60s and beyond. So thank you, everybody, for listening to this 32nd episode of Good Timin. I hope you all enjoyed the show. Had a really great time discussing Surfer Girl with you guys, and I'm looking forward to covering more of the Beach Boys' early albums and recordings in the near future. So as always, if you like this podcast and want to hear more, feel free to subscribe or follow wherever you're listening. We greatly appreciate the support as it motivates us to make more episodes in the future. Also, as a reminder, the Good Timin podcast is available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So there's plenty of different places to listen and keep up with the show. So thank you again, everybody, for listening, and we will see you all next time. Bye-bye.